All right, so I'm adding FOMO to my dictionary so I can be more relevant now, more cool, right? Well, I'm Jerome, and I'm part of the staff here at Oasis, and I started coming back in 2012. Went through Growth Track, which starts in June. If you don't know that already, it's going to be at the 1 p.m. service. I was serving and Celebrate Recovery and prayer, and I joined internship, and that's where I met my wife, Sherry Fogel, sitting right there. I'll wait till the applause fully stops, actually. No, so we've been married for 10 months. It's been amazing. And one of the things that we talked about when we were married was our future. And for me, career was a really important thing. I was working at Pepperdine. I thought, hey, this looks long-term. There's a great organization, great people. And it's a funny thing because then about a month later, I get contacted by Oasis to be on staff here, which is a dream. And it's been a dream. And it's 7 months now into that dream. So I thank Pastors Philip and Holly for this opportunity. But every dream has a cost. And this role, I love it, but it's challenging because leadership is about pressure. And when you love the church, when you love people, there's the weight of people's lives in the balance. And I feel that pressure. And so there's weeks, probably every week, when I'm discouraged, I'm anxious, I'm stressed. Sherry and I will have conversations every week, and I'm dealing with things on the inside because this position, in any position in leadership, you're forced to face your inadequacies because we're not adequate to solve our own problems. It's too much for us. And maybe if you feel like you're inadequate in something you're facing, maybe it's a challenge in your family, in your marriage, maybe it's on your job, maybe it's in your finances, maybe it's with your health. For me specifically, one of the inadequacies I face is when it comes to loving people. And sometimes I feel like I just have no love left to give. I want to love, but it's just not there. And what I mean by that is that when I love someone, I can be fully present. I can be right there with you. I can listen. I can care. I can think about your needs. Now, not being able to love someone, that's not a harmless thing. It's not a harmless thing. Theologian Karl Strobel says, when you try to love someone, but you don't have the capacity, you end up using them. What happens when you try to love someone, but you don't have the capacity, is you end up using them. So over the past months, I've found that my capacity for love is tied to my emotional health. And that's what this series, Inside Out, is all about. From talking about the mandrakes and the roots of things, talking about comparison. It's all about what's happening on the inside. Now, Peter Scazzero, he's a pastor in a church in New York, and he went through this whole process himself. He wrote a book called The Emotionally Healthy Leader. And in that book, he talks about the secret. There's a secret to something called loving union and having emotional health. And what that is spending your time in an intimate relationship with Jesus. So investing your time in that relationship so that what we think, what we do, and what we feel, it looks like Jesus. And here's how we can see what Jesus looks like. Let's turn to 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things. Love never ends. Isn't that a beautiful picture of love and loving union? And I think in spite of that picture, we can also understand what love is and what loving union is by understanding what it's not. And Peter Scazzero mentions 10 things that are signs that you're not having loving union with God, not being in that intimate relationship. I'm gonna share 5 of these signs. One is, and maybe you can identify with some of them as I'm reading them. One is, you can't shake the pressure you feel from having too much to do in too little time. You're always rushing. You're often fearful about the future. You're overly concerned with what others think. Or maybe you feel unenthusiastic or threatened by the success of others. Now, I think we can all identify with some of these. I can identify with all of them in the past months, even in the past week. Actually, all 10 of them. So there's 5 you didn't even know about that I'm identifying with, okay? So I think when I read that, it made me think of 1 Corinthians 13, but in the negative. And so I can kind of relate to this. So I'm going to read 1 Corinthians 13 kind of in the negative so we can get an idea of what love is by knowing what it's not. I'm neither patient nor kind. I envy and boast. I'm arrogant and rude. I insist on my own way. I do ask my wife. I'm irritable and resentful. I rejoice at wrongdoing. I can't bear all things, believe all things, hope all things, neither endure all things. I fail. I relate to that as I'm reading it right now, and maybe you can relate to it, or maybe you know someone who's treated you in this way. But here's what I want you to know. You can't give love you haven't received. You just can't. You can't give love you haven't received. What I've learned is that I need to slow down the pace of life so I can be with God, so I can let Him and His presence and His love impact every area of my life, so that my will would be His will, so that my thoughts would be His thoughts, His ways would be my ways. I do that. For me, it's reading the Bible, it's maybe meditating on Scripture, maybe it's spending time in silence or solitude, it might be worshiping, reading a great book about Him, whatever that is. It could be even spending time in a connect group. There's just different things that get me into that presence. And when I do that, I open myself up to His love and I feel His love. And the reason is because God is love and He treats us with patience. Remember 1 Corinthians 13. He treats us with kindness. He's never in a rush. He's not mad at us. He doesn't remember our wrongs. He can endure all things. The problem is we get it mixed up and we think we can do it, so we do leadership on our own. So here's how you can build your capacity to love. Make loving union your number one leadership priority. At home, on your job, here at church, in life. Make it number one.